Hello, people. Alright, hopefully my setup's good. I'll keep monitoring that as I go, as I do. I don't think anyone's here yet, but, well, I thought it would be nice to have a stream again. So we'll see who hops in. If you're in the Discord, you can actually just hop right in. Oh, Willie, you're in here. I can't hear you for some reason.
That because I don't talk.
Let me see. No, I still can't hear you.
Hello, hello, hello.
How odd. Give me a second.
Here's a second.
Okay, what about now?
Sure, I can talk and see if you hear me. Well, I can hear myself on the live stream.
Well. Alright, now I can probably hear you.
Can you hear me?
No? My goodness.
Hello.
I have to... It's gotta be my settings. Make it so low down. Okay. Alright, try talking now. Okay, yeah, but now I heard something. Can one of you guys talk really quick?
Hello.
Oh, hello, how are you? I'm quick.
Yeah, no, were you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for some reason, my new headphones, they just don't work. I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is.
They might just be bad.
Also, I think that maybe my voice is doubling through OBS. So let me just... So I think I do have to have this on. But then I have to mute myself whenever I'm not talking, so it doesn't double you guys.
Well, that's not a big deal. I guess.
You can deal with that then, I guess.
Yeah, but if you listen back to like the last...
if I wasn't your end, but...
No, the last few streams, for some reason, I've had this like really weird tinny audio effect, and it's... I don't know why. Sometimes it has to do with the way the Bluetooth headset was set up, I think, but... And I don't have... I need to get a new microphone. I thought that these cheap little headphones with the microphone built in, that it was going to work out, but...
Oh,
I
frankly,
guess that was silly.
My audio at least seems to come out like that on a lot of your streams. Like the tinny thing.
Yeah, but
it's alright
to do that. I think it's my settings that changed it. And I think it changed when I started using different kinds of headsets. So, I don't know. I'll just have to find... I think I have a more traditional one with a cord. I'll just settle for now.
So with me, the issue's on my end?
No, it's probably issues on my end. I'm, like, positive. Anyway, how are you guys today?
I am quite alright.
Same but different?
Although I have to go soon because I need to eat dinner, but I'll be back later if the live stream isn't over then.
Alright, well...
That's cool.
I think I can show at least a few hours, so a little bit longer than last time.
I watched Pacific Rim, and it was surprisingly good. I think, well, and it is directed by Guillermo del Toro, I think his name is, who directed Pan's Labyrinth and a couple of other things similar to that. I think if you're going to do a popcorn movie about giant robots and monsters hitting each other. That's definitely how you do it. Definitely beats those Transformers movies, which were well, shit. So yeah.
I think Pacific Rim, isn't that like Kanye West's favorite movie, like of all time?
I don't
That's not
know.
surprising.
I think that when it came out, Kanye West was like, "This is the greatest movie of all time." Like,
That's something he could say actually. I do believe you, just because of that basis. It's very, very
right?
like him to do.
Yeah. What have I been watching? My friends are all watching Mandalorian, so now I watch it with them. I guess it is better than I thought it was. I watched like the first couple
When you
episodes
say
and wasn't into it.
and when you say your friends, you in fact mean Toto, right?
I mean, in real life friends. I mean,
Oh, right.
I
Oh
have
yeah, I forgot
actual
I had
friends
those.
now because now I'm in America. God,
Yeah,
it's so cold
I said
here.
that because he sends them to me, or he sent one to me today.
Why do I always forget that both me and other people have in real life friends?
I don't know.
mean,
I used to.
Well, then you kind of know because you kind of was the same way.
well, and for me,
Yeah.
for a while, it was like I used to, right? Anyway, but
Didn't you
that's all
tell
good and fine.
some story at some point? If it's not too personal, I think you said at some point that in sort of conventionally or stereotypically gay fashion, most of your friends IRL used to be female. Like I remember you saying that, but then I don't know, they distanced themselves from you. I guess something like that.
Yeah, well, when I was really young, like in school, like through middle school and high school, most of our friend
Oh,
group
right.
was girls, and they've kind of just like fallen off one after another.
Makes sense.
Oh my god, it's so much the same for me. But technically, most of my IRL friends are still girls because I have a few of them left.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. It's not like we have an issue with them. Like, there's usually a political disagreement, but it's never the conservatives that are like the ones burning the bridge over it, you know?
That's actually very true because even the female friends I have who are not like who are not right wingers or conservatives, right? I mean, like, not even they might like disagree with me, but they won't like distance themselves from me. But I do agree that the lefty ones are more likely to do it than than
Oh, absolutely. Like the thing about being friends with leftists is that it's like even if you want to just put all of the shit, even if you want to just get past all that stuff, the politics, and just put friendship first, it's almost never reciprocated with them. Like my friend Brandon Adamson told me that he had friends that he'd literally known for 20 years, who were like brothers to him and all that, really close friends, and he just completely cut them off when they found out that he was supporting Trump in 2016, and that was the end of that. So
That's amazing. Like I basically have a lot of political disagreements with people that I am friends with, right? But we usually end up disagreeing then we actually don't like to like talk about politics anymore after that. So we basically just like always talk about other stuff because we feel like it's uncomfortable to talk politics with each other when we don't when we did, then we basically just disagreed and that wasn't very fun. So therefore we skipped talking about politics.
My point of departure from like the whole experience is just that I don't get offended by people's opinions so much. Like if they have just an opinion, if they just state one, right? Like I just don't understand why people can't just state their opinions and just have that be a thing, even if they're different. You know what I mean? For most people, there's just like a necessary step with that when they encounter a contrary opinion in the wild, they like really get defensive and really lock up and really like engage in all this hostility, and it's a really uncomfortable experience for them. And I guess it's people who like to maybe argue or to like theorize about stuff, or maybe who just I guess don't take it as seriously. some combination of those factors and others, I'm sure. I don't know.
Well, the thing about that is, I agree with you. Like, I have the same dispositions. I don't get angry or upset when people say ideas, even if they're ideas that I think personally are dangerous. And that's like a pretty common psychological attribute of people like us. Problem is that personality of just not taking things too seriously and just we can have our disagreements and it's whatever, it's not a big deal, isn't necessarily the greatest thing in the world when your opposition has the complete opposite attitude and see themselves as being sort of like a united front in a war against evil. Like, they literally see their political opposition as evil. So it's like they end up just completely steamrolling us because they have this religious fervor and conviction. And then these right wingers who have this psychology, which I have as well. I'm just saying that this is objectively kind of an issue.
Yeah, that is
this
actually
psychology of just classical liberalism and letting everybody have their disagreements. Yeah.
like, for example, I have in the past get offended by other people's opinions and not wanted to be friends of them because of that, right? And it's even sometimes when people have opinions that like I find to be like bad, and then I usually become a bit disinterested in them compared to the friends that I actually have more overlapping beliefs with. But that's like not just because it's a political opinion. That's mainly because it's like one conversation. It's like you like friends that you have something in common with, right? And if you basically lose a commonality, then you have less commonalities together than you have before you knew that, right? You know that it's not a commonality there, it might be otherwhere, but like then you have one less commonality to find with them, and therefore you kind of like aren't that interested. Yeah, I'm gonna be a friend with this person because this, well, yeah, and
I mean, like the quintessence of this, not an issue that I care that strongly about, is like the abortion issue, for instance. Like, you'll get these people on the right who'll say, abortion is murder, quote unquote, but then they'll say, oh, but don't act as if it's murder. Act as if it's a respectable disagreement. It's like, what? Like, do you think it's murder or do you not? And if you do think it's murder, then how are you supposed to treat it as just like a respectable disagreement? These people who want to murder millions of children. Like, it is kind of bizarre, isn't it, when you look at it like that?
But it's actually kind of true because the friendship or a relationship that I had with a person, it was because I ended it because I got angry at I was in high school, so I was I had a different mindset, right? But she basically said that there shouldn't be a limit, that no abortion should be limited, and there's not anything wrong with having an abortion any time. And I was like, oh my! And then I just told her that she was like a despicable person because like it's kind of like if you basically believe that like an 8-month pregnancy you can have an abortion if you just felt like it, then the personality you must have for that is kind of weird. Like, how can you like rationalize that as being something good, if that's what I mean? I don't really.
I just thought of like a great idea for, well, it's not original, but obviously like a great idea for a dark political comedy or satire where somebody makes the philosophical case for infinite abortion, like, so basically just murder, and they're like, I like this 21-year-old or
Oh, you still there? Or did I lose connection? I think maybe that was just on you.
In America, didn't. I think it was you.
Now I can hear people.
But I would just said, like, if someone decided to advocate for like abortion like right before birth, like the week before, right? It's like even if it were to come out alive, it would survive. But the only way to abort it would be to physically kill it rather than just remove it from the uterus, right? Then how is that different than the argument that you should kill people outright? It's not really very different. That's why you have people that say that women who kill their children you see them justifying it because it's her body, her choice, right? And you have the fucking Prime Minister of New Zealand who basically did so that the women who killed their children in the first 10 years get a reduced sentence as an extension of abortion liberalization that she did without democratic mandates. So it is actually kind of like the cutoff point of birth is actually not a logical one, and nobody actually really believes it is if you actually go a little deeper in what they actually believe.
Well, you know what's interesting is like a big part of the argument, as I understand it, with like Roe v. Wade, has to do with like personal autonomy, and it's a right that apparently only adult women who want, I guess not even always adult, right? Only women who want to murder their babies have this right, and it's like anything that it's like all of the disabling effects of pregnancy, right, those are deemed as like so oppressive that they should be able to, end that, right, in the service of becoming able, right? It's an inhibition on personal autonomy. But you really could extend that argument, all the way out, I feel, right, to justify this concept of like abortion post-birth through multiple years. Right, you argue it would be like the pure matriarchy, right? Where when the mother has an issue, she can just end, right, any person who crosses her. That would be an interesting like dystopian sci-fi.
But that's not really a dystopian sci-fi, because I didn't know you hear this, because in New Zealand the woman who's in charge there, she've actually made it so that women who kill their kids up to 10 years old get a reduced sentence, and she said it was an extension of abortion liberalization. So
oh my god, so what I just said as a complete joke, something that I thought would be like satire, is already happening or on its way to happening.
Yeah, and also like I was actually reading online that there was like this woman who basically said that a woman who murdered her children, no, that's fine, it's her body, her choice. So it's not just a prime minister of a Western country saying this; it's also like people on Facebook. But
by the way, sorry, go on.
But that's the reason why this. And so the funniest part of this is that that knowing this, right? There's still people who believe that ideas that the 10 years doctrine is like valid, because clearly, like when it comes to value of human life, we see a lot of women decided that they don't want to value human life at all. They value killing human life more than the life itself.
And is my mic okay? Okay, I think it's okay.
Yeah, now you're good.
Yeah, Derek. Just to clarify, well, I did tell you this a while ago, but it's just because you said right to abortion, you said every adult woman, and then you sort of course corrected. So from what I can remember, in at least Canada and New Zealand, and I think Britain as well, it is legal for a 12-year-old girl, so starting from that age, to get abortions with no parental involvement.
Oh my god! Holy shit! That's horrible.
Without any consent or knowledge of the parents.
That's
absolutely. And that law, the law that allows that, coexists with age of consent to sexual intercourse of like 16, 17, 18, which is just like retarded, because it implies that like at the age of 12 a girl can apparently consent to not just have sex but then to become pregnant and then to abort the pregnancy with no involvement from the parents or really anybody else. But then it's also supposed to be the case that she can't consent to sex at all for another several years. Like the two ideas can't coexist in the same space.
I'll make an argument here, actually, because this is very similar, right, to this idea that pro-lifers have two attitudes that don't make sense together. That they think something is murder, but then they also think it should be like a politely held position, and it is like you can see there's a sense of hypocrisy there. I think that the problem though is that it's sort of like those are their answers in two different situations. And even though it's kind of like, I guess, suboptimal, right? There's not a good synergy. In fact, there's a dis-synergy, right? A clunkiness to the way that the views map out onto practical reality. I still think that can end up being like your ideologically consistent path. If that makes sense, right? Because when the pro-lifer says, yeah, but like this is something that like we can't make it illegal because I don't like the alternatives, right? That's kind of like they're negotiating with terrorists, kind of like they're giving in. They're taking the fucking that has a little bit more lube, right? Once it's down to that, they're like, okay, fine, you know. Kind of like everybody has their limit, everybody has their price. That's
But
kind of how I
just
see
like
it. And
to
then
say,
same
I
thing for
think
these
the
laws,
fitness-
right? Like the law regarding 12-year-olds getting abortions without their parents knowing probably has more to do with situations that I'm imagining they're imagining like, oh, this is all rape, even though it's probably not. Actually, I think statistically it's like definitely
But
not.
I just need to say,
I'm just gonna. This is gonna be very dark.
but wait, before
That's what people would like to believe. The primary reason for 12-year-olds getting abortions is.
Yeah, and I
You know what
actually
I'm saying?
really respect that you put it in those terms because I think that's actually totally true. Also, I just wanted to mention really quick here. So the way that this stream is set up is through the Discord. So if you're in my Discord, you can just hop into the live and. You know, I had it set up kind of this way before, and hopefully I don't think anyone will abuse it. I guess the worst you could do is like be really loud, and then I'd have to mute you. So
I just need to point out one inconsistency that they make by letting underage children have abortions without the parental consent, right? Because they think that it's completely fine to kill someone's children, right? When they're in the womb, like, oh, you can kill your kid, it's fine, right? They think the parents should be like have the rights to kill their children, right? But the parents do apparently have the rights to kill the children. But if the parents are the custodians of the children, they can kill the kids, but they cannot stop the kids from killing their own kids. It's like the rights to kill your kids is more important than other rights to your kids. Like the right to not letting your kid do stuff that you don't want them to. It's kind of weird.
yeah, and I'm sure I mentioned this probably last week. Just like the fact that this is like the number one issue for so many voters. Like disproportionately women, but still to a really crazy degree. You know, they're white knight simps, and it's I don't know. Like I remember when I was in a philosophy class, there was like one paper we could write, and I thought, oh, maybe abortion would be a good topic, and I thought about writing it, and I didn't because I thought I don't even feel strongly either way. It's just not a very.
But there's something I don't get
Solvable.
about this simping for abortion, right? Because what the fuck would a man gain from abortion? That means that if a man would say, "Oh, I need to do it for the women so they can have abortions," like if a man wants a woman, why would he want the woman to be able to kill his children? Like, isn't that like defeats the purpose of having a woman in the first place?
I think most men. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Good way to be.
I think that most men just kind of have no interest in this topic. Like, you know, when people say more women than men are pro-life, like that doesn't surprise me. But there are probably also more women than men who are like vocally pro-choice as well. Like the average guy just wants to stay out of all of this shit. So.
Which they cannot tell all the guys to do, except when it comes to payment, which is kind of interesting. But I need to go and eat now, so I'll be back later.
See ya.
See ya.
So, on a slightly more light-hearted note, Derek, did you watch or listen to HBR's most recent call-in stream?
No, what was that one? I'm always like a day or two behind with them.
So, a couple of interesting things happened, or, well, really just one interesting thing. This caller joined, who was interested in lookism and, I guess, like, technological solutions to men's declining SMV or some shit. And his solution was kind of stupid, I'm not gonna lie. His idea was to, not stupid, but just inefficient, which was to genetically engineer women to be attracted to ugly men. So that was like, that got the ball rolling for them to start talking about, basically solutions to, I don't know, rising inceldom or whatever.
You could totally
And,
pitch that idea, though, from a gynocentric perspective, though. Maybe this isn't that bad of an idea, right? You say, hey, women, you're all complaining over we're all the good guys.
Well,
like, we have ways to just make you satisfied. Right? I think this is an interesting eugenic path. I mean, and we can prove scientifically that women are too picky. It's just, like, objective all upside. I don't know. I'll stand for this guy. This sounds like not a terrible plan. It kind of doesn't mesh well with the alternative plan to create the artificial uterus and have the homo state and all that, right? But put a couple eggs in each basket, right?
We're probably gonna get onto that later, but they brought up examples of what they were calling ugly men that they thought women would be attracted to. And they brought up Cillian Murphy, and like if you look up this guy, like Jesus Christ, man, like if he's ugly, I'm Nosferatu. It's just really his features are a bit unusual because he has that like really masculine lower jaw that he's quite recognized for, but then the upmost part of his face and especially his eyes look very feminine. Has more like that kind of boy band look, but he's in no way, shape, or form ugly. So the fact that they were bringing him up as an example was a bit weird. But they also used examples like Benedict Cumberbatch, who actually is pretty hideous, to be fair. He has kind of a horse face. But then, like, he's a celebrity, so just saying, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch has a horse face and some women like him, it doesn't mean anything to, like, most men.
No, yeah, I guess he is the man, Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah. And
so
then
I had a thing.
Brian.
Yeah. So yeah.
Sorry?
So you were explaining the most recent podcast with HBR, the Colin Show.
Yes.
And what happened?
What I just described happened. That conversation, and also something else was that Brian Martinez said this thing about how he thinks that men's sole motivation for doing anything in the entire universe is to seek sexual access to women, which I thought was pretty unusual. Like he said that something like he said if men knew that they could get a girlfriend no matter what they did, no matter how productive they were or whatever, something like that, then they would lose any motivation to do any kind of work and they would just vegetate and sit on their asses and play video games. So I guess I wondered what your take on that was.
Well, there's probably more truth to it than we'd like there to be. I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be true of people, but it does seem, like it's not totally. Like I imagine that truth is kind of like somewhere in the gray area, right? And I imagine if like Brian were asked to clarify this, he'd probably waffle on it a little bit. I imagine. Like I don't think he would hold this as like a hard thing. I imagine it's something he kind of threw out there. Because HBRs, they like to kind of pontificate a lot. That's kind of part of the charm, right? Is they're very like idea focused, and that's kind of a fun. It's a fun thing because they do take things in different areas, and I think that sometimes they probably overstate conclusions.
Well, I mean,
they definitely do. Like everyone does to a degree.
The reason I think it's wrong is that just like the premise to that, the idea that if you're not worried about sexual access, then or if you're not competing for sexual access, then civilization will kind of grind to a halt. I mean, it doesn't seem to stop women from doing what they want to do because they don't have to worry about but they don't have that concern, do they? And neither do gay men.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop them. It doesn't stop them from getting out of bed every day, going to work, doing things. A lot of like the greatest geniuses of all time were homosexual. And like if you wanted to, sorry.
And incels too.
So, if you wanted to, like, the logical conclusion of this, I guess, would be that if you looked at all of those, the great men of history who drove humanity forward, scientists, entrepreneurs, and whatnot, according to this logic, if they had all just happened to be homosexual, then nothing would have happened. They would have just stayed at home and vegetated. But so that's, and of course that's ridiculous, and that's why I don't buy that argument.
Yeah, so basically, any evidence of action that had the opportunity cost of not being, the pursuit of pussy, basically, all of that kind of stands as counter evidence to the theory.
Yeah.
But is there another singular, more important thing that would compete with the pussy factor on average? I think that's the real question.
Well, it just doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with productivity or civilization, however you want to say.
You're weighing one thing, the pussy factor, versus literally all of the other things, and then saying, but what about all of the other things? And it's a little bit unfair, right? Unless the argument is the sole motivation for all human action is pussy begging or whatever, right? Like unless that's the claim, then sure. But if the claim is this is really important.
He said, these were, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but this is very close to what he said. If men feel that they can get a woman, meaning a girlfriend, I guess, no matter what, then they're going to feel that there's no reason to do anything, quote unquote. That is literally what he said.
I'll have to listen to it in context, because it sounds...
dumb?
Well, it sounds a little... I mean, I just feel like I don't know what it means, unless it's explained further.
I agree, actually, yeah. It was a little vague, because...
Yeah, right? Yeah. What, I don't know. Well, I've been bullying Brian. I've been bullying Brian for over a year now, off and on.
Yeah.
To be on a show or something.
Yeah. Well, that would be interesting. Moreover, it's just we discussed this at some length last time. The idea that women choose men, how intelligent or creative or productive or whatever they are, is wrong. It's even if you think money, for instance, is very important, it's they don't give a shit how you made your money. Let me give you an example. You could imagine some rich kid, trust fund baby, I guess is the term the Americans used, who inherits $10 million, and he decides to, and by the way, this is what I would do if I inherited that kind of wealth, because I'm a lazy fuck. He could decide to simply stick all of that money, the $10 million inheritance, into an index fund, and then get paid out in dividend stocks, a wage basically of 50 grand a year or 40 grand a year or something, enough to live comfortably basically for the rest of their existence, basically just retire at the age of 20 or 21. And then you could just spend the rest of your days going surfing and playing World of Warcraft and doing whatever you want to do. And a man like that, the opposite of productive, the complete opposite of what most people would call productive anyway. He literally just had everything given to him. Not saying that's inherently evil or anything, but that's what it is. And if he was good looking, he would have no trouble getting women. It's as simple as that. Being attractive to women has nothing to do with how industrious or creative or whatever you are. I don't know where this idea comes from.
Well, no, where it comes from is because people, they don't want to hear men's problems. They want men to shut up. They want them to shut the fuck up. And that's the motivation for perpetuating these ideas. It gets men to shut the fuck up. It's something you can throw at them to get them to be distracted and to pause and hesitate and then wonder if there's some other thing they could possibly max, you know? I think that's the chief motivation. Not the only one, but I think that's the number one thing is people just, they don't care about men, they don't want to hear about their issues, and it makes them shut the fuck up. When you think of like a whole class of different excuses you can just throw at them.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't know if this is exactly what I was talking about, but it makes me think of like, say you work near the coast or something, and your job is to like head fish as they're coming in for processing, and it's piecework. So you get paid per the number of fish you decapitate, essentially. I knew someone who did this kind of job, and like the people who promulgate these ideas about male productivity and female desire, they're gonna be like, you only decapitated 70 fish an hour. Like maybe you need to decapitate 500 fish an hour, and then you'll be drowning in pussy. Sorry. Eric?
No, that
Hello?
is funny. it reminds me of the thing you sent me from Reddit, the personality maxer of like the shower, and I'm just imagining that, but it's all like fish head guts and shit.
Yeah.
It is funny, like
Yeah.
what makes the whole like inceldom community like really amusing is just how like it's the land of low hanging fruit in terms of like their ability to criticize people looking down upon them from any different direction. It's just like it's a whole story of just two move checkmates of just incels completely being right about everything all the time, and it's such a spectacle. I'm not sure, like, if you follow a lot like the big internet debates, right? It used to be politics in general. There was the whole atheism versus religion thing. There was the SJW versus anti-SJW thing. There's the whole, like nationalists versus commies and progressives and everything, right? There's all these different things that are happening, and like incels versus the world is, I think, like the most like overwhelmingly one-sided and hilarious and like a true underdog's tale in terms of winning the argument, whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like, yeah, the personality max at 10,000 or whatever you want to call it. That was the Reddit post.
The shower.
With like 100 jets or whatever. Like, who the fuck can afford that shit as well? Must like water bill for that must be unbelievable. But
or you only need to shower for like 30 seconds because it just gets everything instantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I doubt that's how a person would use it, but so I found this thing online, and I think it's really interesting. This is the fascist elements test. It's a 50-question quiz, and I just want to run through it. I linked it in the chat, so anybody in the chat, if you want to follow along, that's a thing.
I might have done it before.
This one? Let me see. I don't know if there I guess there's no data on it. I'm not sure if it's new or not. Well, I guess we could go over this like silly quiz thing. I know that there were also you said that there were other topics you wanted to cover. Is that what we've been talking about, or were there other things from last week that you were?
No, like there were things from last week, but like, if you want to do this thing, it's not an overwhelming priority, I guess.
Well, either way is okay. It's just in the description. I also have all the links in there. So I guess any of the ones that like were on topics that we didn't discuss, we could run over those. I don't know how much everything, because this quiz might take a while if we really like commit to it.
Hold on a second. I'm just checking the word count. That's okay. About 1,500 words. That's nowhere near what it was last time. Okay. So sorry?
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. And I'm trying to get into the habit of taking notes of when I do things on the stream, so I can make timestamps. So okay, let me see. So we're 40 minutes in. Okay.
So this discussion would be interesting for Toto if he were here, but so most research and by the way, like, I'm not trying to convince anybody of the morality of any of this. I'm just looking at what's happening. So most research that's been done on so-called artificial uteri basically amounts to making sort of incubators for premature birth that just happen to be called artificial uteri by the researchers. But in actual fact, what they do is they take already viable fetuses from animals and then implant them into these incubators when they're already about halfway through or more than halfway through the gestation process. And then at that point it's a viable fetus anyway, and it's just a matter of growth. And physiologically that's quite different from embryogenesis, which is very intricate, and it's affected by tiny fluctuations in the mother's hormone levels, morning sickness, how stressed she is, the mother's body filtering out toxins, her diet as well probably, although people probably overstate the importance of that a little bit. So if you wanted to do embryogenesis, so just creating a human being basically from a zygote in an artificial environment, you might need to basically recreate an entire human body, which is obviously not feasible, and even if it were, there are endless costs and regulatory issues. It's pretty obvious that no government on this planet is going to hand reproductive technology as powerful as this to random people on the street, especially not to men, and the servicing costs for it, even if it were possible, would be prohibitively expensive for the overwhelming majority. I mean, just think about how costly IVF is at the minute. And in this case, you'd be talking about high-tech equipment that's rented out for 9 months at a time that requires constant supervision from technicians, highly skilled technicians, with a very rarefied set of skills. So this is never going to be a technology for the average Joe, and even if it exists, it'll be primarily for use by barren women. So another thing that people have speculated about is that sexually disenfranchised men, sub-5 men, however you want to say it, incels, are going to convert to homosexuality. But I doubt that this is actually feasible unless you're already to some degree bisexual, and the only possibility for men who are heterosexual would be risky brain surgery. And I don't think any benefit attendant to being gay is going to be worth the opportunity cost of having parts of your brain scooped out for most men for the foreseeable future. Or really for any future. And if there's a pathogenic origin to male homosexuality, as like I've speculated about, you would then be talking about like deliberately infecting people with a virus, probably a virus, with the obvious unsavory ethical implications that you could be facilitating the mutation or growth of the virus into something more sinister. And even if sexual orientation switching technologies do become safe, I don't think most men will go for it, because it'll be such a drastic change to their psychological identity, kind of like, you know, implanting false memories or removing memories, selective amnesia kind of thing, which most people also wouldn't consent to under even extreme circumstances. I think it would just be too much of a head fuck, like, you know, messing with the fundamentals of someone's identity. And for that reason, I think most people would refuse it. And it's also probable that homosexuality will become less common in the future because of current selection pressures, because it is to some degree heritable, less than most things, but still heritable. And since gays don't have like sham marriages anymore, and therefore they don't have biological kids anymore at the same rate that they used to, the homosexual percentage of the population in men should decline over time. And open homosexuality will probably be frowned upon more generally in the future because there are going to be more religious and conservative people because of demographic trends, because those people, religious and conservative people, have more children than other groups. But on the other hand, so like the flip side to this is that, sorry, hold on 1 second. Uterus transplants have already been done with successful pregnancies, moving uteruses from one woman to another, with I think about a dozen successful pregnancies, from what I remember. And it's not ridiculous to ask whether or not in the future it's possible to do this for trans women as well. Although it'll still be expensive, it's a much more proximate technology than artificial uteri. And I think transitioning into a female form, and this could be like where the logic breaks down, like I'm not sure about this, I actually think it could be less of an identity crisis in a lot of ways, because it's changing their exterior appearance rather than their desires, their internal feelings and so on. And biologically speaking, the purpose of being a man is to be attractive to women, to score with women. Not saying it's a good thing, morally, but I think biologically that is the case for obvious reasons. And the calculation that most men will do, I think, or well, many of them, is that if you're not doing that, or if you're not able to do that, then the reasoning is, why do I even exist then? At least in my present form. So that's already going to be sort of an identity crisis. And then there's less of a psychological barrier to just transitioning and then being able to LARP as someone important, with all the attendant benefits. So of having a uterus, of being perceived as a woman, being perceived as female. So when 50% of men become involuntarily celibate, something like that, some large percentage of them, in my opinion, will probably transition into women because it could actually allow them to have a genetic legacy, uterus transplants. And moreover, there will be increasing demand for trans women as girlfriends. People find this as an uncomfortable subject to talk about because for a lot of sub-5 men, it might come down to a choice between, say, a 50-year-old woman or 55-year-old, something ridiculous like that, like as a young man, or being with a 23-year-old trans woman who actually looks youthful and relatively attractive. And I think many men will choose the latter, I think most men, whether they like to admit it or not, I think they would choose the latter of those things over dating a 55-year-old. So ultimately, what might happen is that we could end up with like kind of a third sex almost. And it's interesting because there is some historical precedent for this, of there being like sort of 3 gender roles, or like a subset of men who are androgynous. People talk about like Native American societies where this is a thing. You would have, say, 20% of men who will still be around, chads, essentially. And then the female population. And then significant swaths of the male population will have converted, or transitioned, I should say. And it's also more tenable, I think, in a more religious world, which is what the future will be, as crazy as that sounds. Because a lot of religious groups have sanctions against homosexuality, but religious texts don't mention anything about transsexuality or gender reassignment surgery for obvious reasons, because they didn't know about these things. So
yeah, okay, so there's a lot to comment on there. So okay, I think that as far as there being like a third sex, it reminds me of the whole two-spirit thing, right? Of course, it was men who had like kind of an emergent, basically gay gender, right? Which is kind of like, to me, I think that's what we're talking about with this trans women phenomenon. Although it's for very different reasons, right? For these sub 5 men, it's more of just a straight up physiological thing, and I feel like an interesting like consequence of that is that you're not really going to have much control for like the personality type or the disposition of people who necessarily do this, except for the fact that you're going to be filtering out the ones who just absolutely like will not do it. I thought it was interesting that you seem to think that it's like a greater psychological burden for people to switch their sexual orientation than to switch their actual sex.
Well, it's like I said, like I was hesitant because I'm not sure about that.
Well, the other
But
is,
it's more like
but you also it's funny too because since you're bi, you'd expect you to have the opposite idea, right? That the idea of like, oh, you switch off one or the other, and that's just like a small change. Whereas a person who's completely one way or the other, you would imagine they might be more likely to have a perspective that says, wow, that'll change my entire identity. Personally, for me, I can totally imagine like personalities staying relatively just intact even if they just reverse like a polarity on it. Like I imagine like for some people it might have a change, but most people they're not very neurotic and they're not very like self-reflective, right? So I think for a lot of people they'll just look at this and think, hey, I was gonna go become a trans woman and instead I can just be gay. But it is interesting that that dynamic of potentially seeing less less male homosexuality while also having a more religious society. I understand the demographic argument, and I think that's fine. That checks out. I don't think religion stays intact through that, though. I don't think that religion like it erodes so fast. I just don't feel like there's any guaranteed religious position, particularly not of Christians.
well, I was thinking of like I mean, I think this does apply to Christianity as well, but Islam, surprisingly enough, like in conservative Muslim countries, homosexuality is prohibited, but sexual reassignment surgery is surprisingly common there for gay men because the Quran doesn't say anything about sex reassignment surgery, so they do this as like an out, basically, because then they get to say, well, I'm a heterosexual woman now, as opposed to a gay man.
Yeah, isn't that crazy to think that just that we actually might enter an age where orientation is more stigmatized than like being trans. We were kind of
Yeah,
already there, but it's very very weird, especially because just like to be oriented away, that's like a thought crime, I guess. Like compared to
yeah,
really making physical like demands on reality, you'd think that like for whatever like weirdness or like dysfunction or whatever is just kind of inherent in homosexuality or another just like offshoot or I guess non-traditional sexualities. Like you'd think that you'd prefer for that to all kind of get like shuffled off into the orientation area where people just kind of are normal humans living their lives. Whereas like if you put it into transitioning and stuff like that and like body dysmorphia and then make that kind of the path you steer a lot of this weirdness down, I don't know, that seems
yeah.
counterintuitive to me.
And I don't know if the line of argument I made before was completely clear about how sexually disenfranchised men might sort of choose this path over having their sexual orientation changed. The basis of that intuition was just like most people don't like the idea of having their brains screwed with because it's like that's the quote unquote soul, if you get what I'm saying. Like they're having their souls tampered with or whatever. Whereas if someone is, making themselves look physically pass as female, and like they can rationalize that as, well, I'm just changing my appearance. I'm just changing my external appearance. It's like a different, psychologically it seems different, but I don't know if that intuition's off.
I wonder if there's a correlation between people who highly value the impact of ideas, right? The quote unquote ideological determinists, and people who probably overemphasize the importance of, you know, the mental and the spiritual and that sort of a thing. And it's funny
Yeah.
because, you know, pretty much anyone you can mention to them and you're just reminding them changes to your body affect the way that your mind works, right? Like they're not these totally separate things. You know, and then the
Yeah.
idea that you know, that, I mean, that's the whole premise, right, of transitioning is you're saying I need to change my body because it's going to make my mind work. You know, like it's literally the premise of transitioning is that changes to your body affect your mind. And then it's funny that you see a generalized attitude. I guess speculatively, maybe
Yeah.
this is unfair, but I think there's something to this. That's my hunch. That's my intuition.
To
That
what?
my
Something to what?
intuition that to this idea that people, the same people who are overestimating the impact of ideas, right? Because they're underestimating just like the just genuine momentum of aspects of reality, and you know, like everybody knows that being right doesn't always matter. Like ideas kind of
Yeah.
have their place in an influence, but I think there's just a general bias and tendency to over exaggerate them. And I think this is present probably more so within the same people who do two things, which is forgetting that that changes to your body affect your mind, and then also overvaluing and overemphasizing mental changes.
Yeah. I would imagine so.
But I guess
Um.
we're both more on the materialist side of things. So I guess that makes sense that that would be kind of where we stand.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. At this point, it's so. Oh God, there was something else I wanted to say about this. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Oh yeah. So. Oh, sorry. Were you gonna say something?
No, no. Well, I guess I was just remembering. I think maybe you are kind of right about Islam. I think that does make that argument about the change in religious demographics a lot more powerful, which is it's an interesting idea. I don't think it's
Oh.
going to be as dramatic though. I don't think that the changes regarding gayness or transness. I don't think it's going to be such a dramatic thing in the wide scope. I think that we'll just see it kind of a disproportionate growth relative to like what it is. You know.
Yeah. And something else that could be said about this: risky surgeries and highly expensive surgeries might not even be the most efficient way to go about doing this in the future, because gene editing in well, it's a while before we're really going to get precision gene editing, but in say 100 years, it'll be possible to find genes that give men, say, more feminine facial features than others, and you could say find a gene that regulates body hair growth in men and just switch it off so that you're a male who doesn't grow body hair, and tweak other genes that feminize your facial features. And by doing this, you would have because that avoids the head fuck of like and all the complications of like getting people to go through surgeries and the existential hell that seems to put some people through. Instead, it could just be the case that you were a male, I guess, born to progressive parents who were interested in experimenting with weird shit like this, and you're a male, but you just happen to pass as a female unusually easily, because you were given feminine facial characteristics and hips and a lack of body hair and short height, just putting all those things together, something like that. And then in the future, even though it's probably only progressive whack jobs who would want to like engineer their children in this way, it won't be such an existential crisis for the kids when they grow up, I think, because then there'll be a niche for them to exist, if you get what I'm saying, because of all the disenfranchised men around who will value transness. Trans women will either want to transition themselves or to have intimacy with them. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would probably be niche within the context of that kind of technology existing, right? Because I imagine if that was going to be like a popular or semi like widespread and developed thing, it would be sold to parents on grounds that you could regulate, right? Like you could kind of steer things in a way that avoid like extremes in any genetic way without like pinpointing it down to every single specific thing.
Yeah,
Because right, because then people would see that as like a responsible thing to do. That if you go the full natural route, you end up with just just hideous monster abortions. I mean, by then, of course, we'll already have abortion up to like 21 years.
do you are you talking about? I don't know if this is like what you're vaguely alluding to, like the pleiotropy concern, like how sometimes if you screw around with genes, they often have multiple effects, and you might be tampering with shit that you don't realize.
Well, no, I know nothing about that in particular, but that just sounds like common sense. Like that's obviously the case with genes is we're not looking at it with a high enough resolution to really get the full picture because we're kind of just looking at the cutting edge of a thing, you
Well,
know?
that's true. That's true, but there is a way that you can do it safely or fairly safely. Well, not fairly, yeah, I think safely. We've discussed this before, which is that what you can do is you can look at existing variation, which seems to be harmless. So, for instance, let's say that your objective is to create a race of people with extremely high facial attractiveness or something. If you just go randomly poking around for genes that you think have something to do with facial attractiveness, then you're probably going to get something wrong and you'll end up with weird deformities and shit or down-regulated intelligence or God knows what, right? But then you could also just elect the DNA of existing highly attractive people who are healthy. I don't know, Taylor Hill, or in men, Sean O'Pry or whoever, highly attractive people, and you could look at the genes that are responsible for their facial features. Doesn't mean it's completely harmless, like, who knows, maybe some of the genes that are responsible for Taylor Hill's pretty face also give her an increased risk of like heart disease or something. Just a slight increase, relatively speaking, but still, relatively harmless in the scheme of things, within the normal healthy range. And then what you do is you just you do large genetic studies on these populations of healthy people for whatever trait it is you're looking for. Attractiveness, intelligence, or health itself, whatever you're looking for, and identify those genes that are responsible for the traits that you want, and then just select
and
those.
just to clarify, right? Like when you say something like intelligence or like facial attractiveness or whatever, within each of these, you could like identify multiple different variables and then map out different genes based on each of those, and just do these like multiple times for each thing, and then just take whatever overlaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just look at existing harmless variation is basically the TLDR of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, because then you already have like so many instances of it already happening, right? So like it's already kind of been controlled for its outliers. So if anything strange happens, it's like a true outlier, not just some crazy thing that happens. Because you're replicating something that just has already been replicated so many times.
Yeah, I mean a really extreme version of it, although it's banned. I know this is people are surprised to hear this, but human cloning is banned. Like, you're not allowed to do it for some reason, which is a shame because, like, we could clone all the geniuses, just take the greatest geniuses of all time, take their genomes, and you could create like 1,000,000 of them, and then just, come up with galactic solutions to all kinds of problems, John
Yeah,
von
just like
Neumann.
stick them on a luxury island.
Yeah. John von Neumann, who might have been the smartest guy that ever lived, made innumerable contributions to about like 300 different areas of science. Why don't we have his genome? Why haven't we cloned him already? Oh shit, we can't. It's illegal for some reason.
That's pretty crazy to think of, like just the lost potential.
Yeah.
That's gonna be like the next Library of Alexandria. Is people are in the future are gonna realize, like, damn, they put off cloning genomes way too long.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, shit, we lost Elvira before then.
Yeah. And I guess I should have issued what I said before about just future male disenfranchisement in the sexual marketplace. It's also probably worth noting, and you and Toto have talked about this a lot. So the technology behind sex robots is going to improve, and it's also possible that I'm a bit sleep deprived. It's also possible that for the vast majority of people, the trans thing is just not going to work for them because it's too much of an existential risk to their mental health or well-being, or just too much of a head fuck or whatever. But then there'll be like this arms race. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I think this actually is how it will play out. There'll be an arms race between the flesh and blood transsexuals, basically, and sex robots. And the appeal of the transsexuals will be that they're real, that they're actual humans with actual minds that can facilitate actual intimacy for that reason. Then that'll be set against the opportunity cost of these mental health consequences that you and I were just alluding to, and then set against that the advancing robotics tech. So
that is kind of an interesting way of putting it, and I think it actually does kind of echo back to this like body mind weird conflict theme, right? Because that's what the transsexual is presenting, really the mind, right? They're saying I'm a human mind, and then the sex doll is obviously just a strictly body, and then this is like a choice then presented to men, right? And
yes.
Yeah, and that is really interesting. It's interesting too that the path of choosing the mind is one that I think is probably, I'd argue that's the more stigmatized path. I don't know. Maybe that's not correct. I mean, definitely it's probably overall more popular on the down low, right? Than like the whole sex doll thing. But I think that we haven't really seen much time for sex dolls to be.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how advanced the technology gets for the robots, or how lifelike they become. But what I was saying, and I think you basically just said this in slightly different words, I think all else being equal, men would rather be with an actual flesh and blood person that actually has a mind. So that's like the trade-off, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that there's still, like, we really can't downplay like just like I guess the status effect of it. Like, I just really think that overall, like, overwhelmingly, people are gonna look down on men dating trans women versus bio women. Like I think that, like, this idea of like a legitimized third sex existing and like being this like normalized thing over time, I just feel like that would have to be something that would be so many decades to be normalized. I guess maybe I'm wrong. I guess maybe if I really sit here and think about the last 10 years and the kind of shit that's been normalized, I don't know. How realistic is that? I'm really curious about this question. Like, 10 years from now, how realistic is it this idea that trans women are just a legitimized like third gender, right? And you have presidents and the first lady, is I mean, an actual out and admitted trans woman, not just a closeted trans woman like before. Right? Like I'm
the
trying to
idea
imagine this future within
the
10
idea
years.
is that the idea is that it'll get to the point where like you really won't be able to tell the difference between like a trans woman and a woman of the usual sort, like unless they just announced it.
Oh God,
As the
and it's
surgeries and
totally
stuff
and
get
it's
better.
gonna be like men, like just normal masculine presenting men are gonna be maybe just barely over 1/3, right? And then they're gonna be presented as the majority. Oh my God, that's it. This is the next path for feminism. This is fifth wave feminism. Fifth wave feminism is when trans women are so prolific and also so like highly just highly like similar to bio women and everything that
Yeah,
they have to push for it being a third gender. And
yeah,
it becomes just like three genderism sort of an approach. And they might not use this specific terminology, but they're gonna find some way to, in practice, right, create cultures and practices that make trans men, and it's gonna be specific to trans men, right? Because there's not gonna be the sorry trans women, because trans men, right, female to male, they're not gonna be relevant. Just in it's like a fad for them. They're just gonna find a way to make middle school NBs kind of like play around a little bit and then just like grow up and realize that they're literally like born princesses that just get to have whatever they want. Um, but anyway, basically what's going to happen is men, because they're going to be 34%, right? Well, that's more than the 33% for each of the femoid types.
yeah.
Something like that. Something approximate. That's the extreme of it, right? Obviously, you'd see. Let's say we have like 10% trans women, right? And then you got 55% women, and then that leaves what 25% men, something like that. If math checks out.
Um, I don't know. The way I envisioned this was actually even more autistic than what I think you're thinking of.
The idea
So
is
the
like men could be a majority even when they're a literal minority, just like they are now, but then adding a category of like trans men are women and having that be prolific totally offsets that in a way that can favor women by boosting the numbers without boosting numbers on paper. That was what I was trying to say and like
yeah,
not articulately.
behaviorally they would be different though, and it
They
would be
would
like
be, yeah. And
yeah,
obviously, I'm on team tranny as far as that goes
yeah.
because I'm a
And I'm not
traditionalist.
not sure if I explained this clearly before. It's like so men who transition into women because they're disenfranchised are still going to be heterosexual, right? So the idea is that like there would be this bottom whatever it is, I don't know, 30, 40, 50%, not the whole 50%, but like a significant chunk of the lower half of men, I guess, in terms of SMV, will transition um, for those reasons, and to have a shot at having a legacy and feeling that their existence isn't meaningless because they can't procreate or gain sexual access. But then they'll all still have like typical male heterosexual inclinations. So they'll have like each other. I know it sounds funny, but like there'll be like this like mass trans lesbianism of whatever percentage of men it is, the lower half of men. Well, then basically like, well, do you understand what I'm getting at?
Basically, what you're saying is that after literally thousands of years of women not making lesbianism work, eventually men are going to start being lesbians better than women.
Something like that, yeah.
Yes, that is what you're saying. Is that eventually, like, men are going to step in and they're going to be the new lesbians and they're going to outclass lesbians and they're going to make lesbianism work.
What do you mean work?
Well, for example, like the DV rates, right? You know that the moment this becomes a thing, and then you have numbers from studies that you can look at, you're gonna find that when you control for the trans lesbians versus the bio lesbians, that it's night and day.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what you'd exactly predict based upon the current everything we have available now, right? And it's going to be hilarious because this is going to take what, like 50, 60, 70 years for this to like be a thing, you know? But like this is going to
Possibly
be
100.
sitting here maybe on YouTube. It's going to be all dusty. It's going to have like a couple hundred views maybe, right?
Yeah.
And then someone's going to find it and they're going to be like, "Whoa." I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, that
that's
would be
not
pretty
that
funny.
novel of a prediction. I feel like anybody, you know, if you really spell it out,
Yeah.
if you really lay it out there, that's where we're gonna go.
So
I
some
just want to scan over
I'll
the
be-
chat really quick because there was a lot of funny shit in here that we should acknowledge.
Okay.
Terrence asked, "What do you call a bisexual men who are involuntary celibate on the female side?" Because it's an interesting question, right? Because I feel like if somebody says gay cell, that means they're supposed to be gay and incel, which I don't believe is really a thing. I don't believe that. Not so much anyway. I think it's very, very niche to be a gay cell. I think that's like a unicorn status.
I was gonna say like the old gay guys, but like I don't think so. No.
No, I still think enough gay dudes are into older guys, so I think that's fine.
Yeah.
So then you have to imagine you're a bisexual person and you're incel only toward women, right? So like the true, like the absolute true cell is the person who's not only a true cell but they're a bi-true cell. That would be like the ultimate like king of all incels is a person who was a true bi-true cell, which maybe one of those exists somewhere, or I don't know.
Doesn't make any sense, because if they were attractive to men, and then if they were attracted to men, then they couldn't be incels.
That's the thing, because that's the idea, right? Is that like the deal breaker on that is that there's gonna be some guy that's like, yeah, that's fine, right? Because the rule is for gay looks. You add like 2 points on the 10-point scale, just like automatically.
Yeah.
And if someone's
Terrence
drunk, it's like 4 points.
Terrence said, "What will Black Knight Fool think about this?"
I'm wondering what he's thinking in particular. You mean about our projections for the future? I think he'll be down for it. He'll complain, but I think overall he'd be down for it.
Yeah, I would think so. So I guess the other thing that I wanted to talk about was so like recently I was listening to Janice Fiamengo, or I only listened to a tiny bit of it. She was having a conversation with Warren Farrell about, and this is how they phrased it, the role of women of European descent, they just said white women, in what they're calling woke politics. And I haven't listened to most of it, but I'm guessing that her explanation hinges just on political and environmental mechanisms. I've always suspected that it's rooted in something a little more primordial, I guess the word would be. And many people miss this because of just the hegemony of environmental determinism in most people's thinking. And I also think the problem is narrower in scope than people typically talk about. I think it's very specific ethnicities of women of European descent that contribute the most to, I guess, woke politics. I don't think you're going to find many German or Italian or Polish or Czech surnames among the ranks of high-profile feminists. So, like, to get into this, I have to establish the precedent of using Wikipedia pages.
Alice Schwarzer is a German feminist. She's pretty high-profile. God, she's the worst.
I guess there's that.
I don't know.
So,
I just know her from her debate with Esther Wheeler.
yeah. Like, I need to establish just the precedent, of using Wikipedia pages as evidence for things, because people might be uncomfortable with that. So Wikipedia pages have been used in big studies to collect data on certain populations, because it actually is quite good for that. Lists, names, dates, etc. But this obviously has to be undertaken with all the obvious caveats that the authors of Wikipedia pages have their biases, of course. So if you look at the Wikipedia page list of feminists from the 19th century onward and later sections, if you organize the list of names like the names of the countries alphabetically, so that all of the people from each country line up, you'll notice that there's a huge overrepresentation of people from the Anglosphere. The UK, the US, Canada, Australia, all legacy nations of the British. And at first brush, you might dismiss this as an effective population size, or you might argue that the authors are most likely to be from those countries. That is, the authors of the Wikipedia pages. So they're prioritizing figures from countries that they're from for inclusion on the lists. But if you organize the countries alphabetically so that they all line up, and if you just look at the Americans, then you'll notice an even more interesting trend. Despite America's very mixed European population, there's a noticeable overrepresentation of names such as Blackwell, Greenwood, Brown-Miller, Carpenter, Grant, Johnson, Livermore, etc. And those are all very clearly English names, or at least names from the British Isles. And if you look those names up in the Internet Surname Database, which I did, you can see that they are from the British Isles at least. And there's also a fairly significant number of French people, although it's less clear what to make of that. So this is similar to other research, which is linked in the description, I think, showing that the frequency of vegetarian and vegan restaurants in the United States by region or by state is correlated with that region's frequency of English ancestry in places like Idaho, Utah, and so on. That's where most vegan restaurants are.
And
now,
that's why they say, when you're building a vegan restaurant, the TCs. Yeah.
So, I don't know what that means.
Do you get it? Do you get it? Because British people drink tea, so you say the TCs?
Yeah, I don't get the C's part.
Like it sees
wait.
truth. Because that's what the T means. It sees the truth.
Right, okay. But I don't think...
Because I had to think of one that rhymed that was similar to the nose. Because usually when you identify like a demographic group based on their last names, it's the Jews, right? So then I had to think of something that was like the nose, but like for the Brits. And it's either their teeth or it's like the T. And I thought the T was the more polite choice.
Yeah. Well, the thing about... I mean, it's not something that I care much about, but like... The thing about teeth is kind of a meme, from what I can tell. Like, Brits' dental hygiene on average is actually better than Americans. But, so... Like, from what I can remember anyway. I don't know. So, it's, like, I looked it up at some point. I don't think it's a coincidence that those two countries, Britain and France, people from those countries, I don't think it's a coincidence that they're number 1 and number 2, respectively, for scientific and technical innovation in Charles Murray's Human Accomplishment book. He found that those countries produced the most inventions historically, followed by Germany and Italy in the 3rd and 4th place. The English and the French have a history of unusual behavior, non-conformity, which makes them susceptible to promulgating new ideas and philosophies, some of which are useful, others not so much, like feminism. So it's like a blessing and a curse, like so many things. Of course, this doesn't mean that feminism doesn't have mass appeal outside those countries. It clearly does have mass appeal with all groups of women everywhere, at least the foundations of it, which is just, female victimhood. It just kind of happens. It waits to happen, and then once your country's developed, it happens. But it's not a coincidence that the British and the French blazed the trail, as they do with so many things. So it looks as though feminism isn't so much a manifestation of white women per se, but especially British and French women, the Britanno-Gallic woman, I guess, to use the Latin phrases, because women are the gatekeepers of morality in most societies, and Northwestern Europeans, like the Brits and the French, are the gatekeepers of strange ideas in general, and ideological feminism originated from the mashing of those two tendencies together, basically, in the form of those nations' intellectual elite.
So basically, like, British and French women are like the spear tip of the direction of like our zeitgeist. Because I remember you mentioned this before, right? In regards to just European ideas, is it seems like they're ideas that are generally like very popular and very easy to accept kind of across the board. But then what happens is they just get started like in Europe and in white countries faster.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I
Same
think
with
that
tech
I think that
as well.
basically if you just take that, then times it by the whole trope of women being the gatekeepers of morality, then it just
Yeah,
logically follows. Oh yeah, your British and French women are like the spear tip of leading this crusade into fucking hell. This like awful. I don't know. I guess is it all terrible? Maybe I'm not being a little bit fair.
sorry, what?
Maybe it's
You cut up.
Yeah, I did cut out. Sorry, I was just commenting. Okay, so obviously,
Well, I mean,
if I could choose any demographic, I wouldn't choose.
I've got to make sure I get this in here, just to white knight a little bit, I guess, for my people or for my women, I guess, since I'm British.
Just not the French,
It's like,
right?
sorry.
But you're gonna throw the French under the bus, right?
Well, no, I
That's
I don't care.
disappointing, but okay. That's go on.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just
Yeah.
joking.
I was just gonna say that it's like a bell curve, is what I mean. If you think of it as like it's like if the if you just if you have two different IQ distributions for two different populations, let's say you have one country with an average IQ of 100, another one with an IQ of, let's say, 105. It doesn't seem like an extreme difference, but it makes an extreme difference at the tails, if you see what I mean. Because, well, that's like, at the tails, it means that, like, people who are extremely high IQ, say, have an IQ above 145, will be significantly more common, like several times more common, in the country that has an average that's just 5 points higher. So it makes the difference at the extremes. And I think it's the same with this. It's that Northwest Europeans, especially British people and French people, they have just a little bit more of this proclivity than everybody else, let's say. And that means that we produce an extreme of people who are into this wacky shit, and since we're talking about women, an extreme of them who are into this stuff that's bigger than most groups. It's still the case that most British women or French women, for instance, are not ideological any more than women anywhere else are ideological, of course, or men. So
Right,
if
but
that makes
basically
sense.
you just like need to have those outliers that are really into speaking out, and then being a woman helps. So then it makes sense that that's where you just see more of it.
Sorry, could you repeat that? You like?
Oh, sorry. No, I was
you
just because I guess I'm a little far away. Maybe I should scooch in a little more. That might help. Let's see. No, I was just saying. It makes sense then that you would need to have some women who are interested in it, who are basically outliers. But if you have that slightly higher average, then that's why you'd see more of them.
yeah,
Yeah.
more outliers, relatively speaking, than other groups, and that's how this. Well, it's not the reason that we're in this mess, because, like I said, we would be in this mess anyway because of the obvious mass appeal of these ideas. But it's how this all started. Basically, was the people who descended from those nations, especially people from the British Isles. I guess I should issue this with one caveat, because if you remember, I was originally looking at Americans who have British-sounding surnames. I don't know how strong a proxy surnames are for ancestry in the modern United States. That is like an unknown, because white Americans are so mixed, Brits and Germans, and they usually have like a mix of different European ancestries. But I'm prepared to. Just give me a second.
Sure.
I'm prepared to bet that say 100 years ago, and many of the people on those lists on Wikipedia are from several generations ago. It must have been a stronger predictor of actual genetic ancestry back in those times. And indeed, if you actually go to the Wikipedia pages of some of these American feminists who have those British-sounding names, then you'll see lots of tells. In many cases, it explicitly says that they are of British descent, or they came from Massachusetts, and that's kind of an indicator that you can look for, because a lot of them actually were descendants from the original British colony of Puritans who landed in Massachusetts. Quakers, that's another tell, for instance, because they came from Britain as well, I think.
Yeah, so this is the last of the links that you would send that are in the description. The correlates of English ancestry in the modern United States.
I've also researched that topic if you want to hear.
Yeah. But Derek, were you going to say something about that?
I mean, not in
About
particular.
my link,
I don't have any particular opinion on a British heritage in America. So it's interesting because I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I can comment on that if you don't mind.
Oh no, I got the coof. It's the it's the sneeze. It's the
Terence Hypnonipple said, and Jews, and that is also true. Yes, them as well. Somebody else said, God, this is really going slow.
No, that was commented quite a while back, and I'm not sure what they meant in particular, because they're being pretty vague, but I don't know.
But
I feel like we've covered all kinds of topic and a lot of ground quite quickly. But maybe they're just really, really eager to get to that quiz, because I could see from that perspective how that would make sense.
So, Jay, what you were going to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say is that it's one strong indicator if someone have an English surname in the United States. It's usually, that's an indicator of like if the person is light-skinned person, right? Then it usually tend to be a person of originally an Anglo, like genetically speaking. But it doesn't have to be, because some other we know Black Americans tend to have at least English-derived surnames to a large degree as well. So then you know that they're probably not of English descent. You can have a teeny tiny, but it doesn't really matter.
The most stereotypical Black name is Tyrone, which is that as well, and Tyrone, which is like Irish, I think.
Yeah. I mean, not British, I mean Anglo-Celtic is more accurate assessment of
Yeah.
the European genetic marker in modern day Black American, as well as not of the namesake. But that was something I would like to add, is that a lot of Americans might have a name that sounds British, but it's not actually a British name. They just had their name Anglicanized because people in the United States didn't speak their own, were speaking English, right? They didn't understand how to pronounce names like, so they changed the name to become like an English sounding name, right? But usually you can detect that those names, like Fisher, for example, which is mainly a German descent, they have just changed the spelling of it in the United States to make it more consistent with with the language of the United States. And I also would like to say that if you look at the old stock Americans, like old stock Anglo Americans, is that they might not be as English as a lot of people would think. They're primarily English, but a lot of the a lot of them were Welsh, but besides that, there was a lot of people who lived in, because the Britain they purchased the colonies that were from the Netherlands and Sweden as well. Before they had the 13 colonies, right? And those populations mainly were absorbed by the Anglo-American populations. And that's the reason why you see a lot of people of old stock American descent might actually have a lot, and have Frisian descent as well, because the people who were mainly living in the Dutch colony in North America were actually not actually of Frisian descent. Like for one example of rather than Dutch, but one example of an American name that are of Dutch origin would be Roosevelt. And because I know a little bit Dutch, I know that the original pronunciation would be Rosenfeld, which literally means the Rouse fields in Dutch, so it's kind of interesting. So I hope all this add to some information, and also to mention that a lot of the people that lived they came to America during the colonial ages of Britain. Well, a lot of them came from Ireland, but they're not really Irish. Irish more like Scots Irish, and that's actually really common in the United States, like several millions of them. So yeah, there's just some additional information that might be relevant, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I was my thinking a little bit more broad than just English people. I was thinking just the British Isles, England,
Yeah,
Scotland, Wales, Ireland.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit didn't put so much weight in Scotland and Wales. I assumed that you were including that. That's why
Yeah.
I wanted to point out the pre-British colony, like the non-Anglo-Celtic, like the Dutch, Swedish, and also French, because a lot of it belonged to France before
Yeah.
that. So I wanted to just put a little more emphasis on that.
Yeah, it looks like I am basically correct about this though, because if you look up the regardless, because if you look at those pages, the biography sections of a lot of those names, or most of them, like I said, there are these indicators, like many of them actually were descendants from the original Massachusetts colony, or it just explicitly says that they were of British descent. And then there's also the fact that there's a massive overrepresentation of for instance, Australians and Canadians as well, which again is all British and French. So
yeah, that is very true, and I don't disagree with anything you said. All you said, I was just wanting to give some more nuance to. Let's give some more information. But probably you already gave a lot of information. I just didn't hear anything, but it's a little interesting. But compared to places like Australia and places like Canada, we do know that the European descended population of those regions are far more British than that of the United States. Probably because there were less people living there before they were part of the British Empire, and because America was independent long before the other colonies, the former colonies of the British Empire, they had more immigration early on compared to the colonies that remained within the British Empire.
Yeah. Can you remember? Do you might know this, Jay Willie? Do you know who the Mormons descend from in America? From Utah, like those guys. Which
I know
European?
that. They are predominantly English, but some of them are Swedish, but to less extent. A Mormon tend to be either pure English, the majority of them. Some of them might be entirely Swedish, and some of them might be both, but those are both tend to be more English than Swedish. I know the Mormon family that live in America are the Swedish side of the family, not the English side. But on average, there are far more Mormons of English descent than Mormons of Swedish descent.
Well, that makes sense, because the states in America that have the most British ancestry, the four that come to mind, like if I'm remembering this correctly, it's Utah, Idaho, New Hampshire, and Vermont, I think. Those four states. And the rest of the white American population is predominantly German, I think, is the most common.
Yeah, that's true. And also like the South, it's an interesting topic because the South are also mainly of, well, as you said, are actually very similar, but the difference between like the South being mainly of English, Welsh, Scots, Irish, British descent, right, is that they basically separated from they were much more earlier diaspora. They came to America like in the 1600s, whereas the other British diaspora in America came in the 1800s. So people tend to like, it's very easy to gloss over the older.
Wait, sorry. Who are you talking about? Were the only ones who came in the 1600s? Could you repeat that?
Oh, if you look to like the American South, like the southern states of America, right? And that's very common. I
thought the Puritans came to New England in the Northeast in the 17th century, like the 1600s.
Yeah, you're right about that. I just wanted to say that if you compare like Utah and the American South, like the British ancestry in the American South came from the 1600s, whereas the Utah-based one was much newer than that, if that makes sense.
Oh, I see. Right, later
migrations.
Yeah. That's okay. It was just me, my low IQ. So, yeah, that's, those were, the whole 6,400 words I wrote for, like, this time and last time, like, that was everything. We've just dusted it off, so yeah.
Well, I think it's a lot to take in, but I think it seems like a lot of it kind of checks out.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say is interesting, but yeah. But, yeah, do you think it was worth having all those links?
Well, why not?
I think it was probably
Well, it was funny because I was like writing down notes of things that seemed interesting during the last couple streams, right? And then I would look up like, oh, I wonder what links correspond to this thing, and then I'd find ones that were that way. So yeah, I think the links are overall helpful. It's going to be a little redundant because I'm kind of have just the same links in both videos, but I think that most of them, it's close to 50-50, but the majority of them I think were referenced in the first video anyway.
All of them save one.
Except for the last one then, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like, I mean, it's fine. Might as well have them there so that people can, I like to meticulously reference so that people don't think that I'm just making stuff up.
I do think you saved the best ones for last, so even though we had less of it today, I think that this, particularly the concept of the future of the third gender based on trans women, and then this mind-body dichotomy with their competition with love dolls is, I think that's very real. I think that's going to be like a real spiritual struggle that a lot of men are going to face. That's going to like define a generation.
Yeah,
I'm gonna. Do you agree? I mean, like I stated in those terms, I think that comes off as a very bold prediction, but I think there's no reason that won't end up happening.
Yeah. Well, it'll, like I said, it'll present as basically a series of existential crises. The choice to become a transsexual, or to date transsexuals, or to, with the attendant social consequences, whatever they happen to be, especially in a more conservative or religious world. And then also the consequences of choosing not to get involved with that headfuck, and basically just going to a different headfuck or whatever, of having quote-unquote relationships, or however you want to think of it, with robotics. So
Yeah.
not brilliantly stated, I know, but like I'm not reading from a script or anything just now.
Well, yeah, and that's fine because this is it's a pretty relaxed, chill stream. Do you guys want to do that stupid quiz?
Might as well get on with it.
You know what? We'll try to speed run it because our friend here in the chat did it and he got 39% fascist on it. Apparently mostly due to his traditional values, and he's got 3 on natural hierarchy. So I don't know. The person I saw who posted it got like 21%, I think. So I don't know. We'll see what we get on this thing here. I guess this will be like we can banter a tiny bit, but we're kind of speed running it, and I'll just have the last say. So whatever that means. Okay.
So I anticipate that there might be like some disagreement. So should like, I don't know, like, can I go through each of the questions and then like I'll say how I feel about it, and then you just say how you feel about it, or whatever, or I don't know.
Yeah, if you have something you want to chime in, or if you just want to say, agree, strongly disagree, whatever you want to chime in. And then as we go, we'll just gauge if we need to like be more brief about it, or how much more arguing we need to do.
It looks like the options are you can be completely neutral, or you can mildly agree or strongly agree, and then the same for disagreement, the same degrees. So
the first one is military training for our young is essential for the survival of this country.
You don't have the same first one as me.
We don't have the we don't have the same country. Oh, well,
no,
hang on. Well, then screw you. You need to open the stream.
No, I mean, like, question 1 is different for me, but yes, I'll open the stream. Give me a second.
Yeah, because you gotta open... Yeah.
Where is the link? I can't find it.
It's... Oh my god, it's in my channel.
Okay, Derek, I can see the stream, but I can't see the...
How rude that you're not boosting the number of views. Everybody, please like, share, and subscribe so that this can be the most popular,
I just wasn't looking at it.
Dissident, flamboyant, cringy place, and this will be the place where all of the things we don't like go to die. This place. Against all odds. I want that world, don't you? Sorry, I'll stop interrupting. What are you gonna say?
Attempt 5. I have the stream open, but I can't see the survey.
You counted? Sorry, wait, let me see. Oh, because I don't have the thing on. Bam, now it's there. Whoops, sorry.
It's okay.
That was our boomer moment. I mean, there was a boomer moment at the beginning with the audio, but we got that sorted out pretty quick. The last time I had to edit out the first, like, 6 fucking minutes of the stream. This one, I think we had it all. I had it sorted out within, like, 2. That's pretty good.
Okay, I can see it.
The first one says, military training for our young is essential for the survival of this country. So we have a problem. What's this country?
The thing is that, like...
Because I have to decide if this is Ancapistan or America.
Because I was gonna say, like, the premise of these questions on these political tests is always kind of a head fuck if you're not a normie, because they always presuppose that like
we're gonna respond to the spirit of the questions, not the letter of the questions.
Okay. Essential for the survival of the country.
I'm gonna go slight disagree. That's where I'm inclined to go.
Yeah. I think I agree with you.
I think essential is a very strong word. I think a lot's packed in there, and I think that pushes it to disagree. Even though, like, emotionally, I'd prefer to very much agree with it. But, I don't know. Military in particular? I don't know. There's all kinds of things that are not military that can kind of fill that gap, too. If we get really, really specific about it. Jay Willie, do you have an opinion? We're just going to hit next.
Oh, I would just like to add that there's actually, I would like to add some information because I actually studied fascism when I was in high school. I did my work on that, and fascism is basically saying that the agent is the nation state, and they should and the entire population of a given country should become the military, which means that the whole entity of the nation is a military, right? So that means that
so because you want to be fascist, you want us to choose strongly agree because you want us to have a very high percentage.
No, I'm just saying
because
that if
you're
you that
because you're a Hoppian. Because I have this thing where everybody thinks hop is so cool. I have a Hoppian problem. Is it a problem? I don't know. That can be the great debate. We'll see if that gets them to start stirring a little.
Yeah, but I would just
a little
like
more
to
controversy.
say that would make the percentage higher if you agreed with that statement. I would just like to inform you that little thing.
Well, yeah, I know that makes sense. What do you think, though? Do you think well, because I'm confused. Are you more ANCAP, or do you not believe that that's possible, and then therefore support something? I guess spicier.
Oh yeah, I'm kind of weird when it comes to that. Like when it comes to the existence of a government or not. Like I must be the only person I have met who is ambivalent towards the existence of a government or not. Because I actually don't mind if we live under a government or if we doesn't, although I do expect that governments are fundamentally bad and that all governments are bad and that anarcho-capitalism would be preferable than every single country on the planet. But in theory I'm ambivalent towards it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can get that as like a survival strategy, that if you're not willing to cope with anything but anarcho-capitalism, then you'll be miserable. You know?
No,
I can find that to be quite relatable, so I get why you're willing to live with government and not kill yourself. That's fine. So, regarding this question of whether military training is essential for a country to survive, we're going to disagree.
I would say actually no.
No, these are my answers. Okay, next question 2. There are certain bad people within our nation whose names must be put on public lists so we can keep an eye on them and prevent them from doing the wicked things they're trying to do. This is a wonderful question.
Do it all the time.
This is witches. This is great. I mean, this could be This could be any group.
But this is actually kind of simple. They cannot ignore that the worst people in society, amongst the worst people in society, tend to have willingly put their name and what they're doing on display because they're proud of being so evil. And the people I'm talking about are usually the politicians and the government.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a non sequitur.
Yeah, I say strongly disagree because of the goddamn politicians.
Yeah, they are almost the worst, and they are on display, so...
I would,
what this country needs is a strong leader in whom the people can put their trust. I don't agree.
Neither do I. But the fascists would definitely agree with that.
The
I would
maintenance
say
of
that
internal
religion.
order in the nation is a more important than ensuring freedom for all. So internal order is more important than freedom. Oh no, I'm not gonna just. I know. That's
No,
not even.
That's my answer.
The government should not meddle in economic affairs by dictating minimum wage arrangement. Strongly agree.
Yeah, now we're gonna make it a little bit more fashy, I suppose.
That'll make it less fashy.
No,
Society.
because
Oh, I don't know
the
what
fascists
what
actually
they'll
don't like
think.
minimum wage laws.
Society would be better off if people would rid themselves of all religion. I mean, sorry, I agree. I know there's like probably
But
studies that disagree with me on that, but I genuinely believe it's not. Like here, I mean, I guess part of the problem is when I say religion, it also includes statism, which is
I mean,
obviously
like,
not in line with the spirit of this question, right? But I don't
Yeah.
believe that if people just randomly rid themselves of religion, that like they would be the same as people who currently are not religious. I think that would actually kind of like mellow out a lot of those eccentricities, and then we'd also kind of lose a lot of the like religious bad side as well, if that makes sense. Like it kind of mellow everything out
one
as a
example of
baseline.
religion not being that bad. Well, I would say it kind of is in general, but like, if you look to a lot of this like evil people, well, one main reason why religion is not entirely bad is just because abortion. I'm sorry, but I don't like to go there, but that is kind of like a reason. But that's like one of the few things that religion can be good at preventing, if that makes sense.
So what do you think? Should I bump it down? I don't know.
I would say slightly agree that religion should be getting rid of, if that makes sense. Not entirely, but I'll let me agree.
I guess it's a live and let live thing. I don't have to. It's gonna be strongly agree. Okay. Excuse me. There are certain world leaders alive today or in history whose judgment I would trust over the collective wisdom of all of their contenders. That's a strange question.
I can
I
explain the
feel
question.
very neutral about this.
He's basically saying, what do you prefer, dictatorship or democracy? I'm like, that's like kind of like to decide between pest. Well, to make the age of cliche pest or cholera.
Okay, so this is like is there a situation or a person where like you would trust them over all of their contenders? Well, I mean for me, let me think. Um huh. Like I don't feel like I'd prefer the collective position, but I don't know who I would name as the best individual one. This is a really complicated question.
I mean, like, I think it's kind of like that they're basically answering to choose between two bad stuff, and it's kind of hard to pick a choice between them. Because they're kind of bad. It's like democracy or dictatorship. Like, what do you say to that? I mean, like,
I'm very
that's like,
neutral. I'm just gonna be neutral on this one. We got 50 questions. We gotta keep moving. Our country has become a laughing stock for the world because we have forgotten who we are. That's not the reason. This feels dumb. I don't care about this.
I mean, that's part of the reason, but it's not the reason. To portray it as a reason would just be dishonest.
I just think this is silly.
It is silly. Not just your opinion, it kind of is.
Civic rights such as freedom of speech should not apply to those who intentionally set out to provoke or disturb the public order. What does the public order mean? I'm gonna make that a disagree just because I'm really suspicious of that phrase. Our country has fallen so far off the rails that only a national reawakening can bring us back. Yeah. That's the financial one. There is an international conspiracy at work against the interests of this country, which the government should take steps to counteract. Well, I think the government's part of it. Like,
You know they're going to
So
support
I
it.
don't think they can counteract it. Like I don't expect to see the government. I'm gonna have to strongly disagree. The death penalty as Americans should be abolished. Nope. All people are worth the same no matter their. Oh, this is the one.
Wait, can you read it again?
All people are worth the same no matter their race, gender, nationality, or IQ. What do
In
you
what
think?
context?
Well, I mean, just in general, you know.
But like, that's hard to answer because
What are
like,
they worth? I guess if they were all slaves, which ones would cost the most? The ones with the best race? The ones with the best gender? The ones with the best nationality? Or the ones with the best IQ?
but it's
What
so
do you
fucking
think?
stupid. It's like,
Do you agree that they're all worth the same, or do you disagree and think that they're not worth the same, that they're worth different amounts based on these things?
But it's just so extremely redundant that they're basically saying three biological things and then putting a legal term as well. It's like, that's really weird. I'm sorry, but that doesn't make much sense to me.
Question 14. Differences in economic status between rich and poor largely reflect differences in natural ability. This is
That
one
would
that...
be the case in capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to strongly agree with this. The problem is we do have corporatism, cronyism, capitalism. We have so many other names for it just to get people to stop slandering capitalism, even though maybe it is a better idea to just abandon the term capitalism, right? But
Wait,
it's always
what was that question?
Differences in economic status between rich and poor largely reflect differences in natural ability.
I don't agree. I mean, I'm not a communist, but like, you know, there is such a thing as inheritance and luck and being physically attractive getting you places and that kind of thing. So,
but that's like part of. Like if we are.
well, it depends. Okay, it depends. It depends whether or not you define those things as natural ability. I think the spirit of the question is that those things wouldn't count. You would have to count just say raw intelligence or entrepreneurship or something like that, and attractiveness and connections and stuff or inheritance isn't part of that. So
I actually disagree. I actually would put the attractiveness and things like that, and just like charisma or whatever. I'd put all of that into natural ability. Just this idea that's just like the general pool of things you're just given, right? Versus like money. So it's like money versus everything but money is kind of how I see the spirit of the question. Is how much does money matter?
The word ability, like in normal colloquial use, like denotes something that you like an activity, which like your attractiveness isn't an activity.
That,
or your inheritance.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. Yeah, I guess we do have to decide if that's gonna matter or not, because ability does
Just
kind
my
of
2
imply
cents.
action.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with that. But that is kind of a shame, because I feel like there could be a whole different question there. If you just wanted to focus on money, now it's this whole different thing where it's like money versus things related to ability. Because it is generally the case, right, that people who have money, right, and then have offspring, like they're gonna have similar abilities that have a competency for the money. Like there's all these extreme outliers, right, with like hyper rich people or whatever, but I don't think that they like define like a trend. I think those are just kind of the most like flamboyant and popular examples.
Outliers with people who are what? Sorry, did you say?
Just that there's outliers of people who are like crazy examples of like being like not very competent but also very rich, right? That make it look like it's more the case that it is. I would put
sure. Like I'm not saying that there's no relationship between them. I mean, like the you know, this has been studied. Like I think the strongest actual predictors of economic success are IQ. No surprises there. That's one. That's a predictor. So that counts as natural ability, I think, because intelligence is like, well, just the ability to make the stuff in your head into the real world, or your ability to rapidly manipulate abstractions. So that counts, and that is like a strong predictor of economic success. And then after that, it's attractiveness. So I'm not saying that there isn't a relationship between wealth and competence. I'm just saying that there's all these other things that don't necessarily have like anything to do with something that you perform or do. You just kind of have them, like how attractive you are, or what kind of connections your family has.
Right, so it naturally kind of makes a lot of it, I guess, more randomized. Because there's this whole like gray third category that just isn't being accounted for, and it could just go either way.
Yeah.
The next question is, underdogs deserve special sympathy. I hate that they're all called questions, but none of them are questions. They're all statements that you state agree, disagree. They're called questions, but they're not questions. Anyway.
That's because people write these things don't understand.
They're retards. I hate them. Underdogs deserve special sympathy. Sorry, the people who write these quote-unquote questions deserve special sympathy and help from those who are more successful. Yeah, agree, because it's Christmas.
Okay, so I've, just for the record, I've been doing it while you were talking. I finished the test. I got 59%. So.
Wow, you're the most fascist one. I don't think anyone's gonna get higher than that. I don't think even Toto will. It's good if our country's head of state puts on displays of power, such as assertive forces, dominance, and control. No, I'm gonna be neutral on that. Government should take steps to artists who are diminishing the history and heritage of our people. Yeah, that's fine. It's a good thing if more of our country's citizenry join parliamentary organizations such as the National Guard and other volunteer defense forces. If it's volunteer, I guess that's fine. In general, I'm not like a fan, but it's a good thing if our country's head of state is rotated every 4 to 8 years to ensure no one leader gets too complacent in power. I actually do have mixed feelings about this, right? That if you're going to have a head of state, the rotation, I feel like, lets them escape their consequences too early. But at the same time, I do think that, like, the same leader for too long also presents its own obvious issues, right? So I'll be neutral on that.
Well, the thing is that nobody elects a CEO, right? And in the normal state of things with modern governments, you have this like 4 to 8 year turnover, which encourages extreme short-term thinking, where nobody's really concerned about the long term of the country or the long-term future of the people, more importantly, which is what politicians are supposed to think about, allegedly. Whereas if you had like this an anarchic society where the CEO of a certain territory or dominion that he has ownership of basically functions as a monarch, and nobody elects him and nobody can elect him out unless he's like assassinated or something, then you have the freedom to engage in more long-term projects. And if the citizens of the dominion don't like it, they don't like what he's doing, then they can just vote with their feet basically and fuck off. So that's kind of like the system that I idolize.
Yeah, in theory, right?
Yeah.
Do they have a place to fuck off to, though? I guess is always the question.
Well, the idea is that all of society would be organized like this, just particulated into all these little corporate dominions.
Right.
So,
but
yeah,
like,
taken.
There's only one issue I see with that. That is that if a given dominion, region, or government, right, wanted to like get rid of a population, they can use to discriminate against them until they all leave, and that is kind of like an issue, in my opinion.
Alright, on question 29. Institutions like schools, the police, and private workplaces could generally benefit from adopting more of the military's practices and discipline. This is actually interesting. I'm gonna say no. Crimes of violence should be punishable with violence. Yeah, that's fine. Well, Hammurabi, fuck it. Certain sectors are too important for the state to leave to the free market. Strongly disagree. The political challenges facing our country today are so serious that they can no longer be solved using traditional methods of politics. Yes, I agree. Welcome a strong leader who's capable of sweeping aside those political groups that are holding our country back. Oh, I mean, I guess, kinda. It is good that the survival of the fittest weeds out those who cannot stand the pace. Oh, this is the eugenics question.
That's very progressive.
I wonder how to answer this one. I really wonder. I wonder how to answer this one. I have no idea. I'm probably just gonna put neutral. I think I gotta probably go probably gotta strongly disagree, right? Survival of the fittest, that's like eugenics. That's really, really bad. So I definitely didn't put anything that's neutral or better. I definitely did a kind of disagreement there. To get ahead in life, it is sometimes necessary for some groups to step on other groups. I don't know what necessary means here. To get ahead,
I would say
what does to get ahead mean? Like in theory, right? There are times when getting ahead the best could involve a tactic that's like that, right? With a risk premium, right? And it's like, what does that mean? Does that mean that's the best thing to do? Like, I don't think so. What is necessary, right?
I mean, like, I would say that if you try to build something on a land you own, and then like 30 squatters put up shacks on your land, then I think it's necessary to do something about that.
I gotta disagree. What is Red Raptor saying? Let's see.
Well, here's my interpretation of that.
Have a setup in their opinion, which might follow from it, not the actual reasoning. Yeah, he's quabbling with the questions, and I kind of agree. Like, some of these questions are tricky.
Can I give you my interpretation of that one?
43.5%. You got really fashy too. I think actually yours was a little higher than his, but his is still up there.
Whose? Red Raptors?
Yeah, he got 43.5.
Yeah. My interpretation of that question, though.
Keep moving.
My interpretation of that one, though, it's like it isn't realistic to think that every single discrete group of people on the planet is going to have their own little plot of land completely to themselves. Somebody is inevitably going to be superior to someone else in terms of numbers or in terms of technology or whatever, and they're going to just conquer the land basically and take it for themselves. And it might not always be morally perfectly clean to do, but like, just to give an example, if the Europeans hadn't gone out of their way to colonize, say, Australia, for instance, if they'd let the Australian Aborigines have that territory, you can make that argument, that the land belongs to them, the Europeans had no right to take it from them. You can make that argument, but at the end of the day, they are, and it's very impolitic to say this, inferior. Their average IQ was 70, and if the Europeans hadn't taken over the land, there would be absolutely fuck all there, or there certainly wouldn't be anything interesting. So I think that's kind of, can you read the question out again? Like the last one?
I'm on question 40 now, man.
Okay. The one that was about, sorry, what was it about? Like, it's just sometimes necessary for...
necessary to get ahead in life. It's necessary for some groups to climb over others.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what it's getting at. Like, for the sake of civilization or whatever, sometimes, like, the victor is just going to be whoever it's going to be. And it might not necessarily be quote-unquote fair, but, like, it is what it is. Maybe that's what it's getting at.
Man, there's so many of these that I'm not sure I can answer them with the thing showing without getting banned.
Yeah. By the way, here's mine, Derek, just in case you're interested.
Let's see. War is the only state that shows you what a people is truly made of. Wow. War is the only state that shows you what a people are truly made of. No. Some groups of people are simply inferior to others.
Yes.
Wow, I mean, simply inferior. I mean, what does that even mean? I think there's a lot packaged into there. This is definitely one that I'm probably gonna have to disagree with.
What do you mean? Like,
Probably
no,
quite
some
strongly.
people are simply inferior, morally, intellectually, etc. Physically.
Oh, but they just said inferior in general, so obviously I had to say disagree to that one because that's not one you can say agree to. Question 45 was, a person with nothing to hide has nothing to fear from government surveillance. No, fuck that one. Nope, yeah, fuck that.
Nothing to hide according to who?
Yeah,
the government?
right?
Fuck
Yeah,
that.
exactly. The way anyone can just post their opinions on social media today is not good for the well-being of this country. No. I mean, I agree, actually, because I want the country to die, right? But, like, this is from a perspective, the spirit of the question is, like, you're supposed to care about your country. In which case I'm like, oh, no, these things are fine because my country is going to rebuild itself in a non-country way. Anyway.
Like, there aren't any good countries on the planet. Like, I usually want to say one thing about countries, if I may, before we move on.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is that, like, if you look to all the countries and look to the laws, like, almost all laws have a lot of things that are, like fundamentally extremely wrong with this, right? And it's, like, very, like, insane, it's, like, huge issue, right? And it's very, like hard to justify that one country is somehow good when all countries are bad in different ways, and some countries have good aspects about them. But irrespective of what country you go in, you're gonna have to deal with a lot of horrible legislation. So the only way I think that people could justify a country as a good is if they think that oppression of innocent people is fine, or if they have Stockholm syndrome or no self-respect. Otherwise, you can't really say a country is good, in my opinion.
This is kind of funny. Our results are, like, really different. I got 41.5%. Those are moderate fascist elements. I think that means normal. I think that means a normal amount.
So can you see my results?
Yeah, I wonder how I can do them both at once. I don't think I can. Let me see. Oh, yeah, no, I totally can. Okay, what I can do is I can do that, and then
put them in two different windows or tabs, and then just switch back and forth between them.
Well, I can do better. I can put another window on here that's from a different thing, and then that can have both of them simultaneously. Oh, why is it on the paste bin? That's ridiculous.
Lol.
This needs to be here. How does that look? Does that show the thing? Let me see. Yeah, so that's mine. That's the one I got. A 41.5%. I got tough-mindedness, which I think is a polite way of saying, like, all bark, no bite. Surprisingly high on traditional values. Denunciation of enemies. That's normal. I wish that could be a little higher, I feel like. What's this one? Natural hierarchy? Somewhere in the middle. Strongman leaders, like, kind of lowish. But yours was totally different. Let me see. So I have yours on there. Sorry, I'm just gonna bring up another window here. Okay. Click that. Window capture. What was your overall percentage?
59.
Yeah, so your overall percentage was a lot higher, and you have a lot of higher percents and things that I have like nothing in, which is kind of funny. Is it these ones? Yeah, this one is it. Oh, that's just the whole screen. Dang. Let's put it over here. Wait. Oh my gosh, I gotta crop it.
I watched one of your videos today, by the way.
Did you take it, Jay Willie? Did you finish it?
No, I didn't take it at all.
Well, what have you been doing? God, you should
I was
take
just
it.
like answering the questions live with you guys. That's.
Oh yeah. Well, if you run through it yourself, then we can also compare yours for funsies, or another time.
Yeah, but
too,
I don't know where
know.
to find the link.
The link's in the Discord, where you are, literally.
Where in the Discord?
I don't know. Fuck it. In the
But
lobby.
I don't know either.
In the lobby. Jesus. Okay, now we can compare. This is actually quite amusing. Okay, so let's see. Well, I don't know. So you have like really high rebirth myth. What does that mean? What's the rebirth myth?
I don't even know. So
I feel
that's
that-
kind of strange.
Is that like the idea of the society has to have a calamity and then be reborn? Like I believe that. I just I don't think it's gonna happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen either. So
Well, your chart says that you rate it as the most important thing. Somehow, this
no, it's like
this
it's
gay
on
internet
a
quiz.
par. It's on a par with Strongman Leader, which makes more sense with me.
But I just need to ask you one
Well,
question.
wait a minute, because you're the one who introduced me to this idea of being skeptical of the influence of ideas, and I feel like that's very synonymous with the influence of like a strong leader or figurehead. Because ultimately, I think that's an idea.
Yeah, actually, I agree with you 100% when it comes to be suspicious about the influence of ideas. I think it's more to do with genetics, to be honest.
Yeah, so we're all kind of on that page, but then like, what does strong leaderman mean? I mean, I have it on my chart too as like not insignificant, but I'm not quite sure what it means. I think that I'm just biased, particularly people who are like raised on video games and you like a lot of RPGs and stories and everything, right? That you're
The way
dedicating
that
all this.
the way that I'm interpreting it doesn't it doesn't contradict with my thoughts about the lack of power of ideas, ideological determinism and whatnot. Like I'm still on the same page with you as all of that. Obviously, it's just the way I'm interpreting the issue is just basically just the idea that leaders should have balls and like just a willingness what needs to be done, as opposed to being, I don't know, dithering or effeminate or whatever. That's all I mean by it.
I just need to ask you one interpretative question. One question is that when it comes to the difference between economic status between rich and poor, it largely reflects natural ability, right? I think in theory it would if we had a free market system, but we don't, so it doesn't in today's society because of the government. So that means I should answer that I agree or disagree that difference in economic status between rich and poor is largely reflect natural ability. Like I would say I agree to some certain extent, because a lot of people, when I see they're wasteful with stuff and they waste money on things that doesn't matter, right? And they're not economically sound, right? So what they're doing, even if they are rich, it's going to lead to them becoming less rich. And someone is like decent or a good person or intelligent is going to make them more rich. But then we have the government penalizing the rich and punishing, penalizing the productive and punishing the and like rewarding the inferior, right? So does that? So I don't know what you should answer that. Do I agree that economic studies is largely reflect difference in natural ability? I mean, like it reflects differences in natural ability because the poor are rewarded by the people who are stupid, get richer by the government. People who are intelligent are punished by the government. So that's kind of like results in a different economic status. You get it?
Yeah.
Because like it's like the opposite. It's not like the rich are rich because they're intelligent. It is the stupid people are rich because they're stupid, as the government gives them more money for being retarded.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Because it's kind of good that the question didn't say that the rich people are better because they're rich. No, that they're rich because they are more productive. But there is a difference between rich and poor, and that's due to people's natural ability. That's definitely the case.
Red Raptor in the chat mentioned that rebirth myth has to do with like a political revolution, and that has some synergy with the strong leaderman thing. But like if you look at these two charts, the real big difference, the real elephant in the room is the yellow one. Press and speech control. What the fuck is that? Why do you have that so fucking high? Like what's the deal, bruh? I have like a tinge of that. I don't know where that tinge came from.
Well, I think. Well, no, it's like it's all about power at the end of the day,
I
because
suppose
like
you're just looking at it from a utilitarian standpoint, right? You're just like, well, yeah, like why not just censor this garbage from people so it doesn't expose them and like have this bad influence down the line.
yeah.
So I can kind of see the
Well, I mean,
argument
well-
from like a context of like granting you already have government, right?
Well, no, it's
And like
it's like
control of it.
I mean, I think it's as you're describing it, but the idea is just that if you have a society that has any kind of foundational identity or whatever, then obviously you can't allow people to just constantly try to subvert the society in the name of free speech. And you know, you better you better pray that it's never the case, if you do believe in free speech as like the leadership of a certain political entity or whatever. You better pray that it's never the case that there isn't another group of, let's say, leftists, communists, or whoever, who come into power who aren't interested in free speech because they're just interested in promoting their own ideological ends. And then you just allow them to do it because, you know, you're pro-free speech and all that. And then all of a sudden, you're fucked. So, like, I mean, yeah, you have to be willing to stop subversion. And then it's not that I don't want people to be able to exercise the ideas that they want to exercise. It's just, I think the ideal situation is you have a society that protects its core identity with speech restrictions or whatever else. And if you don't like those restrictions, then you leave and you go to somewhere else that produces services that, well, like a service, basically, or like a free market. You just go to a place that has whatever you want, vis-a-vis Mulbug's patchwork thing.
This actually is kind of an interesting idea, right? Is that you have like Encapistan, but then Encapistan isn't the utopia. Encapistan is kind of like the lowest common denominator land of people, and then it's surrounded by just little ethno-states that are all enabled by the fact that there is a free country everyone can go to. And, you know, if you want to deal with all the implications that come with being free, you can go there. Otherwise, if you want to have, you know, an environment that's like tailored or controlled, or, you know, has whatever like values or whatever that they're willing to like support, you know, in whatever ways. I can kind of see that, right? If you have like a viable Ancapistani alternative, then it does make a lot of these positions a lot more agreeable.
I would just like to say something about its position. One question that says that the maintenance of internal order in the nation is more important than ensuring freedom for all. And I would say that I do. That question is very weird because it doesn't say that the internal order of the nation must be enforced by the government, because I actually want people to willingly enforce that privately without involving the state at all. And then if people don't like it, then they don't have to associate with all the people who does it. But I still believe there should be a norm that people does it, and that people who wants to be, that people should should want to be part of that, freely associated with that, should get the best, should like be beneficiary of that. But I don't think the government should do it. But I still agree that that's like important. Then people can be freedom to be degenerates and like be retarded and stuff like that. You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Because like if the freedom to preserve freedom is not equal to the freedom of abolishing freedom.
Derek, are you still alive?
I'm still here. I'm just contemplating how sad I am that denunciation of enemies. I got such a low score. That's the one I think the most ashamed of. I really wish that I had like a maxed out one on that. The others I don't care so much about.
Denunciation of enemies.
Yeah, you have a very high score on that one. That's like your, I mean, beyond the tie. You care about that almost as much as you care about censoring like Lolicon on Gab.
What's Lolicon?
Never mind. That was just
Lolicon
could have
is
been anything.
yeah, like
oh no, I remember. I thought it was Molly
yeah.
convention. I thought that was what you were referring to. I was like, what? Is there a Molly new convention? And I didn't know, so I wanted to ask if that's really a thing. And apparently it was not, so I was right.
I actually, just for the record, I wouldn't care so much about censoring that. Like, my position on this, just in case you're interested, is that the burden should always be on the person who's saying that something should be banned. If they're saying that you shouldn't be allowed to do a thing, and they have to present, pretty good evidence, basically, that it's bad for society or for the security of the state. So I wouldn't be that concerned about weird drawings. So.
Yeah.
I mean,
So anything on my channel would probably be fine. But I don't know, like propaganda about race mixing would get banned. And that's why you're like almost 20 points higher on the fascist thing.
I mean, like, I kind of like agree that propaganda about race mixing should be banned, because like the lie that people promote that people should seek out the most genetically distinct partner for breeding with is the ideal, right? And that's not true. That's like the most distinct genetic. It's like to breed with the most genetically distinct person is the same as breeding with your sister, for example, right? The balance is that it should be the genetic distance of your third cousin, right? And if you go closer to yourself, that's gonna lead to the risk of something bad happening in your offspring is gonna increase the closer you get. But the same is the case the further away. So the further away you are genetically to someone, the more risk for bad for like negative mutation gonna happen. And this is the outbreeding and inbreeding are like two sides of the same coin. Both are bad. You should find something in between. So to advocate for that, the most genetically distinct person is the best breeding partner to breed with, is the same thing as promoting sibling marriage, right? And if people want to do that to this point that people agree with it, that's bad. And that's actually very good. It goes into the question I'm trying to ask: is the government should take steps to curtail those academics and artists who are diminishing the history and our heritage of our people? I mean, like, to remove the gender studies lies about, and also the media that are lying about the history of the demographic history of Europe, right? I have no issue with the government completely fucking those people over because they're evil, so they can literally get
the people, the liars in the education system. Oh fuck yes, I completely agree. And that's another thing as well. Like, there's no such thing as politically neutral education. People are like, oh, you just want to come in and brainwash the kids with your own propaganda. It's like, look, there is no such thing as neutral education politically. And if you think there is such a thing, that just means that you've been brainwashed by the school system. and you've been convinced that their brainwashing is the unvarnished truth because you're low IQ and you don't question things. It's as simple as that.
I mean, like, I would say that 1 + 1 = 2 is like politically neutral, but
yeah,
if you're gonna talk,
you know what I mean, though, right?
yeah, I know what you're talking about. That was our commentary. I was gonna say someone gonna explain the Second World War, then they're going to say that the Axis power were like the bad guys, and that's not politically neutral. But like, I don't really see a big issue with that thing. But I do see that it's not politically neutral, and I do believe that the school system should at least try to be as politically neutral as they can. Because if I were to teach somebody about, like, I did this like assignment in school, and I was going to teach a class about different ideologies, right? And I tried to be as neutral as I possibly could. But teachers and people who provide the curriculum are all humans. So even if they have good intention of being neutral, then they might not succeed in that, and we just have to accept that. And so I would say that the more neutral you can get, the better. But to say you can be completely politically neutral is actually not really true. But I do think we can be more neutral than we already are. Because I went to high school once.
Sorry.
Oh, you can. Yeah, I went to high school once, and then a teacher literally says in a classroom. This was in Europe, by the way. She's like, "In what way of these 3 examples does men have it better than women?" And I was like, and then she said sexual assault as one example. I was like, oh my. That's why, like, the public, that's so fucking upsetting. That's like a complete fabricating. There's like so fucking lies. It's not just an opinion, it's like a lie, and that's like worse than like liar. And like that's like so untrue. And if people actually take that as like as seriously, then they are an idiot, because that's like false. Like just out of
the idea that sexual violence is a women's issue is like lol. But well, like so many things. But Holo said I would ban simping and e-girls. I actually have kind of a serious proposal where this is concerned. I've told Derek about it a while ago, which is that white knighting should have actual legal sanctions against it. And the legal definition of white knighting would just be anything that's currently a criminal act, especially violence, assault, for instance, that's undertaken purely on a woman's word for sexual reasons or because of a sob story, purely on her word. So an example of this would be these guys recently, and I think it's a pretty airtight definition. Obviously, you'd have to iron out some details, but a guy on Twitter called Only Looks posted a video from Russia, the so-called based Europeans, etc. That notwithstanding, these guys who basically ended up putting a guy in a hospital, just completely beat the shit out of him, like they all ganged up on him, in return for sexual access to a certain woman, because she told them to do it. And I think that they should all be punished by public torture and decapitation, and it should be televised on national TV and broadcast. I think that would be wonderful.
Like, I will basically say this about simping, right? Because men that simp, well, I basically say they can suffer and die because fuck them, right? But a lot of these simps and white knights, they're basically simp for like supporting abortion, right? And simp for like other women that are evil. Like, if they're like gonna be like a white knight and then like defend horribly evil things about our legal framework that is based on female supremacy, and that means that if they suffer from it, then they deserve it, right? I'm not in sympathy, right? But what they're doing is gonna hurt innocent men. So therefore, I would rather just fuck them first, and so that no one else get hurt.
So every white knight is a black knight, also. Like he white knights for her, and then she becomes like the controller of him, and then he'll do anything for her, and he becomes a Black Knight in that way, that he's controlled by her, like she's a witch.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
But the thing is, similar to the war on murder in Europe, where murder declined in part because of the rate at which murderers and violent criminals were being executed, and especially the Bloody Code in Britain, which was in effect until the 1820s. Executions over the most incredibly trivial things, pickpocketing, etc., etc. Sorry, where was I going with this? Yeah, those crimes declined because of it, because it had a eugenic effect. The criminal genes were weeded out of the genetic tumble, and this would have the same effect if you did it for long enough. There would be men would become more cautious over time about just doing things on a woman's word for sexual access or for some other purpose, and that can only be a good thing.
That is true. I do agree that's true. Like that would be probably happen, but I do believe that would happen otherwise, because if you look to something kind of interesting about feminism is basically making women and women do to other people. Like if you basically make it so that women can literally do so many horribly evil stuff, right? That is going to lead to distrustment of women in the future, and I don't really have an issue with that, because like if you are allowed to do the horrible things, right, legally speaking, then that's going to lead to you do it more, and therefore you are going to be viewed in a negative light accordingly, right? So therefore, I believe that in the future, women are going to be less trusted with like stuff in general by other men, especially by other women, I might add, than women are now. Like if we let Me Too keep going, right, then I believe that that employment for women is going to be far more difficult for them to reach as a result of people just falling backward for them. And the same thing happened in play. And I think that if they keep pushing more women-only stuff like that, then the general opinion of women is going to go down, and trust of women is also going to go down. And that is why I disagree with people that say like, oh, we're not trying to take away anything from women. Like, of course, we should take away a lot of things from women. They have far too much. They shouldn't have all these things.
I agree with that also. I think it is disingenuous to say that there should be no rights taken away from women, because if you just try to imagine doubling all of women's rights onto men, it would be totally unsustainable. But I will say, what was it? Sorry. I forgot. Continue.
You were actually the person who convinced me about that, because I was watching your video, Radical Advocacy, yesterday.
Oh yeah, so you got it from me. Yeah.
It's like the best video ever. And I, like, it's like golden. It's like, I love that video. It's like absolutely brilliant, because like it's like if you look at what women can do, like the whole idea. I have a very good example of this. Is that if women, for example, they can like give up their kids for adoption irrespective of what dad thinks, which is like horrible. Like that's one of the most egregious human rights violations that possibly exist, right? And not just without his consent, even against his will, at least in the UK. I don't know if that's the case in other countries.
Eric, can you see that link in the chat? I'm scared to click on it in case it's riddled with viruses, so you can do it for me.
Okay, but I just need to finish this point. Is that
okay.
The reason why women say, oh, but we can't force. The reason why women can do that, right, is because women can leave like a man's name off the birth certificate when she have kids, right? And people say, oh, she needs to be able to do that, because if she couldn't do that, then if she got pregnant and she didn't know who the man pregnant was, that means she's gonna be punished for it. And I'm like, you know what? I actually think that she should not have the right to leave the father's name off the birth certificate. She should actually be forced to put the father's name on the birth certificate of a kid before she gives up for adoption if she doesn't want the kid. And she should not be able to do that. She should only be allowed to give it to the dad. And the right of her to give it away is a right that she definitely should not have. Because, like, and if we used to give the men that pay child support the right to adopt away the kids of women to strangers because they didn't want to pay child support, that would be cloning women's rights and giving it to men, right? And I think it's better to just take away the women's right, because you shouldn't be allowed to take away people's children from them. Like, what the fuck? Like a gender-based law of that, it's like absolutely It's like that's like one of the most outrageous human rights violations that exist, in my opinion. No, not in my opinion. It is the most outrageous human rights violation that exists. And the same thing goes for other human rights violations, such as genital mutilation and someone else. I was just remembering it. Other parental rights. It's like it's the worst, right? And none of them are anything to do with women, right? So. Yeah, I hope I make sense, because I kind of like got on a tangent there. You did hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was just responding in the chat because I was looking at the thing in there. I looked at it. It's like another link to a video site or whatever, and I'm not gonna try to make anything like that work or whatever. Spiritual Mamzer is an interesting character. He's always given Claire shit in her streams, which is always, it's always amusing. It's always fun to see. So it's good to see some familiar faces. Anyway, I was gonna wrap this one up here soon, but I wanted to ask you guys: did you guys hear about this thing? This comic coming out next year, I'm Not Starfire, where there's like this fat lesbian daughter of Starfire. And I guess she has powers, but she's like resentful for being related to her mother, who's obviously much prettier than her.
I don't know what any of that is, but it sounds disgusting.
Yeah, it's horrible. It looks horrible. I guess you don't follow a lot of like the comics drama as much.
Wait, I couldn't hear. Can you repeat that?
Well, just like the continuing drama in the world of comics going to hell is in the future we're seeing this comic called I'm Not Starfire, which is about this daughter of Starfire, right, from Teen Titans. So Teen Titans Starfire, right, grows older, has a daughter. Her daughter is like this fat I was gonna say big titty goth girl, but she doesn't even have big titties. She's just a chubby goth girl with average titties and a lesbian, and she looks really surly. So it's just like it never ends. Anyway, I just thought this was quite amusing, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned it.
Why would you write a character like that? It's like horrible.
I don't know. We'll see a lot of channels probably reviewing it early next year when it comes out, and I think that's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, like some stuff like that. If franchises are being retarded, I usually don't care about those, because like I only care about the franchises I haven't invested in. Because when they goes to hell, then I basically get a little pissed off.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna shut down the stream here because I'm getting a little bit sleepy, a little bit ready for dinner, and yeah, I don't know. I think we had an interesting.
Oh, but before you leave,
I'm gonna be curious to hear how the audio quality on this stream sounds. I'm guessing it's gonna be similar because it was kind of the same setup, but I'll figure out something. I'll be on the lookout for some kind of headphone or microphone or whatever I can use and see if that'll set up correctly and then fix a lot of these issues.
Are we still live?
We're still live, yeah. I'm gonna end it in a couple of minutes here. Do you guys have any closing thoughts?
Oh yeah, I would like to say that what I mean with the right of women have too many rights, right? I believe it's the right of women to be sluts, aka leave out the father's name on the birth certificate because she is didn't know how many guys she fucked. I think that that right should be taken away from women, because women's rights to be slut does not, as of now, is above the men's rights to have their children, right? And I think that the right to have your children is more important than the right to be a slut. And the same thing would happen if it was about men have the right over women, and they don't, but women have that, and that right should be taken away. So I do want to take away something for women because they have too much.
I mean, if you make that comparison and then compare it to the status quo, I guess that's a fair argument.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ashley, any closing thoughts before I close off the stream?
He has voice chat deafened.
Oh,
You
well,
can't hear me.
Fleegan, now you're on.